Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and during our half-hour episodes, I talk to writers about their craft, what they've done in the past, what they're working on now, what they might have planned for the future. We do cast a slightly wider net than writers, however. We have had on artists, musicians, actors, and other kinds of creative people. If you have an idea for someone who might be right for the Writer's Block, whether a writer or not, watch for our address at the end of the program. We'd be glad to look at your suggestions. I also want to mention that because we're in our 23rd year, Cape Ann TV is very proud of that record. But we are only one of many shows generated here at Cape Ann TV by, for, and about Cape Anners. It's not a service you can get with Dish, so remember that when you're thinking of switching over. This is a cable product of which all of Cape Ann can be very proud. Tonight, I'm very proud to say that we do have a writer and a translator who appeared some years ago on the show for the first time and is back with a new translation from Polish. Her name is Danusia Borchardt, and she was born and raised in Poland, migrated and educated in the United States, a very, very interesting background that we're going to touch on in a moment. I'm going to read for her introduction the small paragraph in her latest book, translations of the poems by Cyprian Norvid. Following a career in psychiatry, Danusia Borchardt began translating the novels of Witold Gombrowicz. Her Verdurka received the National Translation Award in 2001. Her Cosmos was awarded an NEA Fellowship. And her Pornografia won the prestigious Found in Translation Award in 2010. Borchardt's short fiction has regularly appeared in Exquisite Corpse. Welcome back to the show, Danusia.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I mentioned, and the book mentions, and your background is very fascinating. I wonder, before we talk about the book, can you give us a little summary of where you grew up and how you got to Gloucester, Massachusetts?
All right. Well, I didn't exactly grow up. I was about 11 years old when my mother and I left the then occupied Poland by the Soviets. We illegally left Vilna, which is the city where I was born, Vilnius now, which is the capital of Lithuania. So my city is gone for me.
As a Polish city.
As a Polish city. So we escaped to Sweden and then went on to England. And I lived in England for quite a few years. Went to medical school in Dublin and then after a while came here.
So you're part Polish and part English and
Irish.
Good part Irish.
Irish, yes.
And so your medical degree is from
Dublin.
From Dublin.
Mm-hmm.
And did you specialize in psychiatry at that time?
Well, I began there, yes, and then I continued in England, in London, and then here in Boston.
And you practiced in Boston and
in Gloucester.
Cape Ann.
Yes.
But now you are retired from medicine and
totally.
And translating.
Right.
Completely.
Right. And writing my own stuff.
And your own short stories, as was mentioned in the book. I think that's a fascinating background on determination and survival and variety, and very hopeful for everybody.
Thank you.
I want to talk now, if we could, about the book, and I want to make sure to hold the book up so that our viewers can get a visual lock on this book of poems by, now would you say his name in proper Polish, please?
Cyprian Norvid.
Cyprian Norvid. You can see his name up on top there. It doesn't show up as well as poems. And there's a wonderful etching on the cover. Now tell us something about Cyprian. When he wrote, I know he's a 19th century poet. Where was he writing and what did he write?
Well, he he left Poland when he was a young man, because Poland was at that time partitioned between Russia, Prussia, and Austria, and didn't exist as a country. So many writers and artists, Chopin among them, left Poland because their writing would be censored. So they chose to live in exile. And he lived in Paris most of the time.
Where Chopin
And Chopin, and he met Chopin and wrote a poem in his honor, in fact. And but he traveled to Italy, to London, to New York, but his poetry is sort of placed in the late Romantic era, but it can't be really categorized, because he was ahead of his time. The way he wrote, the way he looked, his poems looked on the page, and his ideas, they were much ahead of his time, and that's what fascinated me. That's why I decided to translate him.
Were you familiar with him from?
I was familiar with him
when you were a young girl in Poland.
Well, not in Poland. I was
maybe
too young.
Not at 11,
yeah, but
later
yeah.
in England.
Oh yes, yes, and he's a really one of the best poets of Poland, and actually Roman Jakobson says that he's one of the greatest world poets of the 19th century. So, but he was not recognized in his time. He published very little. People accused him of being too cerebral and not very intelligible. So he was really discovered when Poland regained freedom after World War I, and then he became really very well known. And there's a big department at the University of Lublin devoted to him and to his
after
works.
World War I, so this is several decades after his death.
Oh yeah, he died in 1883, and several decades. That was 1918. Yes, several decades. But he worked in obscurity pretty much.
But he is now posthumously very well known and revered in Poland.
Absolutely.
And you've done great work in getting him better known here.
Well, I hope so.
I think, sadly, many Polish writers are overlooked here because there's been a lack of really good translations, which you are curing. You're solving that problem.
Well, thank you.
What made you decide to do Cyprian Norvid?
Well, when I was looking, after having read him many years before, I was looking at him, just happened to look at some of his works, and it struck me how interesting he looked on the page. The lines are meaning flows from one line to another. There are a lot of asterisks which indicate silence, a lot of ellipses. He put hyphens in the middle of Polish words, which is unusual for Polish. We just don't.
Where there were not hyphens?
No, we never put hyphens.
Is this to break a line?
No,
Or
just his innovations. And he also very often put a question mark in the middle of a sentence before a word, like the Spanish do. So this was very unusual. This is what struck me, besides the ideas that he wrote about.
I wonder if you could pull out a poem, and we could maybe talk a little bit about that poem and some of the problems that come up with translation.
Well, I thought of, since he traveled and so much, and also his main body of work is a collection of 100 poems, which he calls vademecum, which means follow me, come after me, and he invites the reader to follow him with his ideas and so on. But I thought I'd read the first one.
Well, which page are you going to?
It's page 27.
I want to mention that the translations in English are juxtaposed to the original Polish.
Yes.
Which is very helpful to see if you can pull out some of the meaning from the original source.
Right. Okay. The Pilgrim. A state of states stands above all states like a tower above flat roofs jutting into clouds. You think I am not a lord of land because my home, forever mobile, is made of camel hide. Even I dwell high in heaven's womb while it captivates my soul as it does a pyramid. Even I own as much land as my foot can tread upon as long as I walk on.
That does sound very progressive for a 19th century poem.
Exactly.
I want to, before we go on to another one, I want to mention the quotation from Cyprian Norvid, the subject of the book, that is on the back cover, which is wonderful. Of the things of this world, only two will remain, two only, poetry and goodness and nothing else. That's very, very a wonderfully chosen line. May I ask you now, translating The Pilgrim, this is a brief 4-stanza poem in Polish, and you keep the 4 stanzas, and you keep the 3 lines per stanza. How strictly do you match the form in English of the original form in Polish?
Absolutely, as strictly as I can. Although Norvid is a poet of rhyme, and I like rhyming a lot, but I can't always rhyme. However, what I really try to do is stay very strictly with his meaning, because he was a very intellectual writer and had many ideas, and this is what he wanted to convey about not about himself, but about the world at large, because he was very distressed about what was going on in the world at the time, and he puts that into his poems. So I really made sure that it's very accurate. Sometimes at a loss to maybe the poetry of it, but that's...
So there must be tremendous problems in translating from one group of languages, going from Slavic to Germanic language, and rhyme must have to just go out the window.
In answer to that, can I just show you some one poem that I tried here, Marionettes. May I do that?
What page is that?
121. Marionettes, yes. How not to be bored when above our globe 1,000,000 silent stars are shining, and each is brilliant in a different mode, and everything is standing and flying. And the earth is standing, so is the chasm of ages, all living this moment of them, not a single bone will remain, though people will be without change. How not to be bored on this small stage, so inexpertly raised, where everyone's ideals are played and the theater with life is paid. How to kill those moments, I do not know. I'm so utterly bored. This question, my lady, I pose to write verses or pen prose. Or write nothing, just sit in the bright sun and read a romance for fun, what the deluge wrote on grains of sand, surely for the entertainment of man. Or better still, I know a better action against this boredom so extreme. Forget people, visit grandees, keep my tie neatly fastened.
Very nice. He had a sense of humor,
Yes.
a little bit of ironic.
And a lot of irony and satire, absolutely.
Now, he rhymed this poem, and my Polish is non-existent, but he doesn't rhyme all of them. Now, excuse me, go ahead.
Most of them he rhymes. They're all, you can see they're all rhymed, really. But he was actually a precursor of free verse in Polish poetry as well. So he was very much ahead of his time in that way. But he does rhyme, you know. I could read perhaps something that will just sound like it.
Would you read one of the poems in Polish, please?
I don't want to pick out a long one. Actually, there's very short one that was published in The Nation this year in February. It's called Their Power.
And what page is that, please?
That's 95. Siła ich. Ogromne wojska, bitne generały, policje tajne, widne i dwupłciowe, przeciwko komuż tak się pojednały? Przeciwko kilku myślom, co nie nowe.
And that was in The Nation in February
Yeah,
2012.
Yeah. So I've got, shall I read in English?
Please.
Yeah. Their power. Immense armies, generals bold, police, covert, overt, of both sexes. Against whom are these aggressors? A few ideas that aren't new, but old.
And you've kept the rhyme.
Well, I try.
And I think that must be a tremendous challenge.
Well, I love searching for rhymes. I really do. You know, most people writing nowadays or translating hate rhyming, but I love it.
I think I like to often rhyme myself,
Me too.
as long as you're not slamming those
Right.
masculine endings with perfect
Yeah,
rhymes every
or-
single time.
You have to be careful. Yeah.
When you said that he was unrecognized in his own time,
Mhm.
was that for political reasons, or was that because he was ahead of his time as a stylistic poet?
The latter, not politically. No, that wasn't a problem. It was because he was obscure and unintelligible. It's very difficult to decipher what he meant, but there's a lot of meaning in them. Can I bring up one particular one? That's a lot
Absolutely,
of controversy about.
Please. Tell us what the controversy is
Yes,
all about.
it's on page 117. He was in Paris at the time. This was December 1860. And this was a time when French and British and Americans were intruding into China. And he was very upset by this. And at one point, the French had destroyed the imperial palace, summer palace of the emperors in China. And they were celebrating this. Now, this poem, some people regard it as more religious, because it was Christmas time, December, and he was brought up as a believing Catholic. He had religion very much in his character. So they think it's mostly that, but some researchers have found that he was interested in what was happening in China. So, although he doesn't say so overtly, but it's in there, you know.
Okay.
And the strange thing is among other things, the title, Yesterday and I, Wczoraj I ja, you know. So that in itself is already odd. So here we go. Oh, how sad and little known is deafness, when you hear the word but lose the comma and iota. The angel calls, but they'll just say, thunder. So you slide a coffin lid over your face under a boulder. You don't want to exclaim, Eli, Eli, why? Oh God. The sails yield to the northern wind, the sea seethes. In my ears a roar, not theory, don't I know a storm? So I dream and sense that history's tome turns marble hard.
Very nice. Very nicely done. I wonder if I could ask you to read the Polish of the same poem, Yesterday and I.
Okay. Wczoraj I ja. O, smutna to jest I mało znajoma głuchota, gdy słowo słyszysz, ale ginie koma I jota. Bo anioł woła, a oni ci rzeką, zagrzmiało, więc trumny na twarz zalamujesz wieko pod skałą. I nie chcesz krzyknąć, Eli, Eli, czemu, Ach Boże, żagle się wiatru liżą północnemu wre morze. W uszach mi szumi, a nie znam z teorii, co burza? Więc śnię i czuję, jak się tom historii zmarmurza.
Thank you. Thank you. It sounds lovely. I know no Polish, and unfortunately, unlike most Americans, I speak maybe one foreign language, if any. And I think you're doing a great service here to make some of Poland's great writers more visible here in the West, in the United States, but in other English-speaking countries, because there are such great writers in Poland, and their courage and the country's courage in surviving so many disasters, so many political disasters, and so many partitions is really to be recognized and paid respect.
Oh, thank you. Well, humor and irony helped an awful lot.
Yes, humor and irony can help us all survive. Where can our viewers get this book, Danusha?
Oh, or on Amazon.com or in the bookstore here you can order.
And tell us what you're planning in the future, or working on now even.
Well, I've just submitted to the Yale University Press the manuscript of my next translation of Witold Gombrowicz, and it's called Transatlantic. And so the manuscript, I'm under contract with them, but the manuscript is right under review right now. But
And give us the title again.
Transatlantic.
Transatlantic.
Easy.
And you've done one or two novels of
Three. This is the
Dubrovik.
fourth. Yeah.
This is the fourth.
And I'm also working on a memoir of my own, which is entitled "How I Came to Translate Witold Gombrowicz." It covers a span of about 20 years, writing and translating.
And when do we get that?
Oh, I don't know. It's not fully written yet.
So it's going to be just about that period. You're not going to talk about London or Dublin and
No.
that fascinating.
Well, there'll be some flashbacks, but it's mostly about that time. Yeah.
I have one side language question that always intrigues me. Are you more comfortable now in English or Polish?
Both.
Not one more than the other?
No. Especially after I've been in Poland for a while, it all comes back, it refreshes me. But quite, when you asked me to count to 10 now, I almost slipped into Polish.
When you go back to Poland, do people remark on your American accent?
I have none. They remark how I sound totally like a native.
Really?
Yeah, because I've really tried very hard
kept
to
a hold of
keep
it with the translation.
Keep the language and keep the pronunciation, so they don't. In fact, usually Poles love foreigners and Americans in particular, so they're very courteous and so on. And when Americans speak with an American accent, they're just all over themselves. But when they hear me, no. What?
Can you put on an American accent if you want to create a lot of goodwill? You can fake an American accent.
Although I must say it's improving now. Poland has joined European Union, so they're all being much more polite to everybody, including me.
We're going to go there soon, my wife and I. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, wonderful.
I just got from Kate our 3-minute signal, and that was about 2 minutes ago, so I'm going to have to wrap up. I want to thank you, Danusha Borchardt, for sharing the poems of Cyprian Norwid with us, and for sharing Polish literature with us. Thanks for being on the Writer's Block.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure and honor for me.
I want to thank all our viewers, too. If you've learned something about Danusha Borchardt's translation work, bringing this great Polish literature to English eyes and English-speaking countries, then the Writer's Block has done its job. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again next week on the Writer's Block. Good night.